outbreak, the husband's singular life for a base quota, who is Chinese family, the female star at the door quickly raises her hand. My husband is awesome. Now don't be afraid. The female actress playfully follows Jeannie into the base, while I am holding my daughter with a fever and locked up in a zombie-infested residential building. Everyone was envious of Jeannie, and when the beautiful girl returned, I held my cold daughter's body in my arms and opened the iron door. The third day after my daughter's high fever, Jeannie returned with the rescue team from the base, who was the family of Chin. The female star who had escaped to the opposite door quickly raised her hand. It's great, husband, for a few days without you, I was scared to death. I froze and looked for help at Chin. The staff were checking with Chin. I stared at her lips. Yes, it was my wife's daughter burning in my arms. My brother called out to Dad. He looked down and took the starlet's hand. Come on. They got into the base car, hand in hand. I tried to call her back through the iron gate, my throat ached. I had known for a long time that she was cheating, but I didn't realize that she could abandon her own daughter for the sake of Chui Wanwen. 3 days ago, the family ran out of the last antibiotic and my daughter was still feverish. I was desperate to open the iron door and rush into the pharmacy to get medicine. Chinny quietly picked up the kitchen knife and said he was going to get out of prison for his daughter. I believed him. I thought that as long as Moon survived, I could not pursue the last antibiotic where it went, pretending not to know that he had given Moon's life-saving pills to the female star at the opposite door, just as he had done 3 months earlier, pretending to not know that she had gone out in the middle of the night and brought the female stars to the opposite gate where they were hiding. But I was wrong. She had gone to fight for her life, but it was Chui Wanwen who could be saved. What would happen if Chui Wanwen survived my daughter? I had been married to Chinny for many years, but after my birth, I knew that she had married me, only because I looked 5 times like Chui Wanwen. When I learned the truth, I was angry and depressed, but I hadn't had time to talk about divorce. The doomsday came. The zombies broke out. My parents, who loved me most, disappeared the same day. I had just given birth that month. Chinny held me and promised to protect me and my child. He said he knew his responsibility, and I knew I had no power. To survive with Moon, I could only rely on him. So when she and her first love, Chui Wanwen, hooked up again, I said nothing. For 5 years, I lived as though I were deaf, and I was only a shell. My loving heart had been strangely hollowed out. Chui Wanwen lived behind the other door. The garments often go out to find supplies, but they don't come back at night. I put my arms around Joy and heard the door open next door. The two of them hugged each other sticky, and probably slept. Later, she often forgot about me and Miyun and said she was going to find supplies for Miyun, but everyone next door was eating canned hot pot, and I didn't see any steamed buns. Moon was so hungry that I cried, but I didn't dare to even go out. I was afraid that I would never go back, afraid that without me, Chinny wouldn't even pretend to do it, starving Moon to death. All I could do was to tear open the palm of my hand and feed Moon blood. The child cried so sad, but next door, she laughed. My heart was like a knife. Having lost so much blood, she passed out into a coma, and when she woke up, she had a high fever on her side. I struggled to hold on to my body and reached out from under the bed to retrieve the last antibiotic I had hidden. The iron door went off, and Qin Yifan rolled in like a wrench and took the antibiotic from my hand, hiding it so deep for me. There was still a trace of oil in the corners of her mouth, and she could smell the meat on her body. Humming to wake up, she threw me a compressed cookie. There's fewer supplies now. You can eat this. I'll take the antibiotics. She glanced at my blood-stained palm and frowned. You don't want cookies either. Just give them to the kids. Don't be a grown man. I was knocked to the ground by him. Wearily, I called out to him. Moon is sick. He needs medicine. I held her calf tightly. In my ear, Moon's thin, weak cries were heard, but Chinny shook me away impatiently. A child's illness is normal. He can't die. He rubbed the antibiotics. The dried blood on the surface was dirty and dead. When I woke up from my sleep, it was already dark. Moon was sleeping beside me. The heat had gone out, and his little body was cold as ice. I listened for a long time against his chest, before I heard the heartbeat. The zombies were coming downstairs. The screams and screams were all night long. I'm sitting in the kitchen and sharpening my knife. Chini won't come back, even if I die, I must earn my life for moonlight. Before Chini left, he locked the iron door with a lock. The key was in his hand, both to protect against me and to prevent the zombies. I hid Yaya, who was unconscious, under the sofa and cut the lock on the iron door. There was a pharmacy at the door of the neighborhood. When we first fled to this neighborhood, under Chini's cover, I broke into a pharmacy and snatched a large box of antibiotics. Now, after a few years, the pharmacy has a lot more zombies roaming around. I was lucky enough to meet the base and the supply team that came out to search for supplies, led by Chini. He was smoking a bad cigarette, sitting in the driver's seat of the truck, watching me stunned. The young man on one side was laughing and joking. Chin Gang was getting married to a big star next week. How could he still eat the bowl and think about the pot? He kicked the young man and asked quietly if I wanted to go with him. I clutched my kitchen knife and nodded. The supply team was more skilled and safer than me, armed with equipment to sweep through the zombies. While they were concentrating on the zombies, I grabbed a gap and ran out under Chinyi's arm. It was a drugstore, containing the antibiotics that Ms. Moon needed most. I pulled up a box and stuffed it in my bag. A gust of blood struck behind me. I tightened my grip on the kitchen knife and turned quickly. The ghoul's monstrous face was smelling at me. After a loud bang, the zombie fell slowly, showing the strangeness behind her. She frowned. Shinju, you don't have to take this risk. I gave a cold laugh. You don't care about Moon's life. I care. Chini grabbed my wrist and dragged me all the way out of the pharmacy. Shinjo, I'll tell you the truth. Moon and you are my responsibility. I won't abandon you. He reaches for my cheek and wipes the blood off my cheek. I knock him down, and a trace of anger runs through his eyes. I turn my head. You gave Moon a place with Choi Wanwan. She squeezes my chin and forces me to look at him. Can you listen to me finish my sentence, being like a wretched woman all day? How can I still like you? I said that. Miyun was my child, too. I wouldn't abandon her. When Wan was timid, I had to settle her first. Then I'd come to pick you and Miyun up. I looked up and picked us up. What day would it be when I died? Chinyi's face went red. She pointed at my nose and scolded me. Shinyu, what is your attitude now? I'll save you. I haven't abandoned your family. I have a conscience already. Look at a man out there who is trying to fight for his life with his family. I looked at her and felt strange. Such a man was my husband. At that moment, a zombie roared through the neighborhood, and I looked back for a moment, trembling. All the zombies around were running toward Building 4. Chini and his teammates climbed into the car and shouted at me, Shinyu, what are you doing? I turned and ran to Building 4. Yu was still behind the building. Moon's father drove the truck away. I forgot how I got home. When I realized that I was covered in blood, my hands were cold, my kitchen knife was already rolled, the zombie was separated by an iron door, its rotting fingers waving on the door. I was in pain, and I didn't even bother to check my wounds. I was busy picking Joy out from under the couch. My hand is colder than mine, it's like a piece of ice. I held her and I felt like I was falling into an ice cellar. I felt cold all over my body. Tears fell involuntarily. Mom, Moon's eyes were half open and his breath was weak.